Emily Carter thought she was meeting her boyfriend, Dylan Reeves, for one last conversation. But by the next morning, she had vanished, and what police uncovered inside a quiet Holiday Inn room would reveal a horrifying plan built on obsession, control, and a secret trap hidden beneath the floor. Emily Carter's day began like any other Thursday. She left her downtown office just before sunset, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder, and a soft hum in her throat as she walked toward her silver sedan. She texted her sister to say she'd pick up groceries before heading home. That message would be the last one anyone received from her. By morning, Emily was gone without a trace. Her sister, Jenna, noticed something was wrong when Emily didn't answer her phone calls that night. Emily never ignored her family. She was careful, punctual, and always checked in. At first, Jenna assumed Emily might have gone to dinner with friends, but when her calls went to voicemail repeatedly, an anxious feeling began to grow. By sunrise, that anxiety turned to panic. Jenna drove to Emily's apartment, expecting to find her car parked outside, but the spot was empty. Within hours, police were contacted and a missing person report was filed. Detectives started with the usual questions: recent arguments, new acquaintances, possible stress at work. Nothing pointed to a reason she would vanish willingly. Emily's co-workers described her as dependable, friendly, and focused. But one co-worker mentioned something that made detectives pause. Emily had been distant lately, distracted, as though something was bothering her. Later that day, her car was found abandoned in the parking lot of a small grocery store just 10 minutes from her office. The driver's door was locked and her keys were gone. Inside, police found her purse on the passenger seat, along with a half-empty coffee cup and her work ID. Everything looked normal, too normal. It was as if she had planned to return any minute. Detectives pulled security footage from the grocery store's cameras. The video showed Emily entering the store at 6:47 p.m., wearing a beige coat and carrying a small shopping list. She moved casually through the aisles, unaware that this ordinary trip would mark the last time she was seen in public. 15 minutes later, she walked out with 2 grocery bags. That's when another figure appeared beside her, a tall man in a dark hoodie. They walked together toward a black sedan parked at the edge of the lot. At first glance, it looked harmless, even affectionate. But detectives quickly recognized the man, Dylan Reeves, her boyfriend. Friends told police that Emily and Dylan had been together for nearly a year, but had recently hit a rough patch. Emily had confided that Dylan had become controlling, checking her phone, questioning her whereabouts, and showing up at her workplace without warning. Just 2 weeks earlier, she had told a friend she planned to end things for good. This new information changed everything. What had started as a missing person investigation was now looking like a possible abduction. Detectives traced Dylan's last known address but found it empty. Neighbors said he'd packed his car late at night and hadn't returned. It was as though he had vanished along with Emily. The case quickly grew urgent. Every hour that passed without contact made survival less likely. Police expanded their search, canvassing nearby hotels, rest stops, and gas stations. When Dylan's credit card showed a charge at a Holiday Inn 2 towns over, investigators finally had a lead and a growing fear of what they might find there. When detectives arrived at the Holiday Inn, the night manager was finishing his shift. He looked uneasy as officers showed him Dylan Reeves's photo. He confirmed that the man had checked in under the name Andrew Lake 2 nights earlier, paying with a credit card that matched Dylan's account. The reservation was for 3 days in room 214. The officers asked for a key and went upstairs immediately. The hallway was quiet, lined with doors and the faint hum of air conditioning. When they reached room 214, they knocked. No one answered. After waiting several moments, they used the master key and entered cautiously. What they found inside stopped them in their tracks. The curtains were drawn tight, leaving the room in a dim, stale gloom. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled. A roll of duct tape lay open on the nightstand beside a pair of scissors. On the carpet near the window sat a length of rope, partially coiled, with fibers stretched as if they had been recently pulled. Officers noticed a phone charger plugged into the wall, but no phone attached. They checked the dresser and discovered Emily's cell phone hidden behind a curtain. The screen was cracked and the battery was dead. It was the first physical proof that she had been in the room. A faint smell of bleach hung in the air. Detectives began documenting everything. They found snack wrappers, a half-empty bottle of water, and a single toothbrush. But there was no trace of Emily herself. The bathroom showed signs of someone having showered recently. The steam residue still clung to the mirror. On the counter was a small pile of women's jewelry, carefully arranged. Whoever had been there had left in a hurry, but not without thought. The hotel's security cameras added to the mystery. At 7:32 p.m., the night Emily disappeared, Dylan's car pulled into the parking lot. He carried a blanket-wrapped bundle into the hotel through the side door, avoiding the main entrance. He didn't use the elevator, choosing the stairs instead. An hour later, he left again, this time alone. He returned near midnight, carrying bags from a hardware store. That was the last time he was seen. Investigators suspected Dylan had moved Emily somewhere else, but there were no records of another hotel booking or rental car. The trail went cold quickly, leaving police with a chilling theory. Emily might still be in the building, hidden somewhere no one had thought to check. Officers began searching every corner of the property, from the basement to the rooftop. Guests were quietly questioned, and one housekeeper mentioned hearing faint noises, like tapping, from the second-floor corridor the night before. She had dismissed it as plumbing. That detail sent detectives back to room 214. They tore through every part of the space again, tapping walls and floors. Behind the bathroom cabinet, they discovered a narrow cut in the drywall, barely noticeable under the light. It wasn't enough to confirm anything yet, but it felt like a clue deliberately left behind. By morning, investigators were convinced the room still held secrets. Dylan's belongings were gone, but the sense of presence lingered. They knew he was planning something that required preparation and silence. And wherever Emily Carter was, time was running out. Late that evening, the parking lot of the Holiday Inn sat under a thin drizzle. Detectives had set up an unmarked van across the street, its tinted windows facing the building. Inside, officers watched the hotel entrance through binoculars, waiting for Dylan Reeves to return. His car, a black sedan, had not been moved since the night Emily vanished. Investigators were certain he would come back for something, and they were ready when he did. At 10:47 p.m., the man appeared, wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He moved with purpose, carrying 2 plastic bags filled with supplies: bottled water, snack bars, and a portable flashlight. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with guests and employees. Surveillance cameras caught every step as he slipped through the side door, heading straight for the stairs instead of the elevator. The team inside the van radioed his movements to officers stationed in the hallway. When Dylan reached the second floor, detectives could hear faint scraping noises coming from inside room 214. It sounded like metal being dragged across the floor. The team waited, counting every sound, every pause. After several tense minutes, the noises stopped. The hallway was silent again. One officer crept closer, pressing his ear to the door. Beneath the hum of the air conditioner, he caught something faint, soft breathing, too light to be Dylan's. That was enough for them to act. SWAT officers moved into position, their boots silent against the carpet. When the key card slid through the lock, the door opened slightly, revealing a narrow strip of darkness. The team burst inside. Dylan spun around, startled, dropping a flashlight that rolled under the bed. He was tackled instantly and forced to the ground before he could resist. As he hit the floor, one officer noticed something unusual. The carpet near the dresser was loose, bulging slightly. They pulled it back and found a rectangular section of flooring that had been cut open. Beneath it was a hidden compartment about 3 feet deep, lined with insulation and covered with layers of thick soundproof blankets. Inside, Emily Carter lay motionless, her wrists bound but her eyes open. The air was heavy and hot. She blinked weakly against the sudden light as officers lifted her out. She had been there for nearly 2 days, trapped in a narrow space where she could barely move or breathe. Paramedics rushed in, checking her pulse and oxygen levels. Emily's skin was pale, her lips cracked, but she was alive. When they asked how long she had been there, she could only mouth a single word: "Since Thursday." Investigators later confirmed that Dillon had created the compartment weeks earlier, cutting into the floor and using hotel maintenance tools he had stolen. He had chosen that specific room because it sat above a storage space that muffled sound. As Dillon was led away in handcuffs, he remained silent, showing no sign of remorse or fear. Officers searched the room again and found a small camera pointing toward the trap door, connected to a laptop filled with video recordings. Each file was labeled with dates and times, documenting Emily's captivity. The discovery revealed just how far his obsession had gone, turning an ordinary hotel room into a carefully constructed prison. The investigation into Dillon Reeves' actions revealed a disturbing pattern of control and obsession that had been building for months. Detectives gathered evidence from his apartment, his laptop, and his phone, piecing together the mindset that led him to trap Emily Carter in a hotel room. His computer contained dozens of files labeled with her name, photos, text screenshots, and recordings of conversations they had over the past year. Every message she sent, every social media post, had been saved and analyzed. It was clear he had been studying her habits, tracking her movements, and planning for the moment she tried to leave him. Forensic experts uncovered digital maps and handwritten notes outlining different plans with time frames and locations. The Holiday Inn was not chosen by chance. Dillon had stayed there before and knew the layout well. He selected a corner room far from the elevators, a spot where noise rarely traveled. His phone's search history included phrases like "how to soundproof walls cheaply" and "hidden storage floor panels." The preparation was meticulous, almost mechanical. Emily's testimony later filled in the horrifying gaps. She said Dillon had called her on the night she vanished, claiming he wanted to talk about ending things peacefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, believing she would be safe. Instead, after leaving the grocery store together, he convinced her to get into his car so they could talk privately. She never made it out on her own again. He had used a mild sedative mixed into a drink he offered her, rendering her disoriented by the time they reached the hotel. When she woke up, her wrists were tied and the room was dark. Dillon told her it was for her own good, that he just wanted to fix things. Investigators found a series of recorded messages on his phone, meant for Emily to listen to while she was trapped. In them, Dillon's tone shifted from calm to desperate to angry, as though arguing with someone who couldn't respond. He believed isolation would make her dependent on him. The longer she stayed silent, the more convinced he became that she would eventually forgive him. His journals described it as a reset, a chance to rebuild their relationship away from outside interference. When officers searched his car, they found more unsettling items: extra rope, sleeping pills, disposable cameras, and several changes of women's clothing in Emily's size. Every object pointed to a plan that could have stretched for weeks if police hadn't intervened. The investigators concluded that Dillon's ultimate goal wasn't ransom or revenge, it was control. He wanted to create a world where Emily existed only for him, isolated from everyone else. Psychological evaluations later described Dillon as intelligent but emotionally detached, capable of planning cruelty without remorse. He saw himself as the victim of rejection, unable to accept the idea that someone he loved could walk away. His behavior before the kidnapping had been a series of warnings, frequent calls, unannounced visits, subtle threats disguised as affection. No one realized how dangerous he truly was until it was almost too late. The depth of Dylan's preparation shocked even seasoned detectives. Every detail of the trap showed intent, not impulse. It wasn't a sudden crime of passion, but a carefully rehearsed plan to erase Emily's independence. When the truth came out, it painted a picture of a man who had replaced love with possession, turning an act of desperation into a calculated nightmare. In the weeks that followed her rescue, Emily Carter struggled to understand how someone she once trusted had turned her life into a nightmare. The physical injuries healed faster than the emotional ones. She stayed in a quiet rehabilitation center outside the city, away from the media attention that surrounded the case. Reporters called it the Holiday Inn Trap, a name that spread quickly across social media. While the world analyzed every detail of her ordeal, Emily focused on regaining a sense of normalcy. Simple things like sleeping through the night and walking outside without fear. Detectives continued to gather evidence for the upcoming trial, building a case so detailed that every moment of Dylan Reeves's plan could be reconstructed. Forensic teams examined the hidden compartment he had built, confirming that the insulation layers were meant to block both sound and heat. The crawl space had no ventilation, and investigators determined Emily could not have survived much longer inside it. That fact alone turned the charges from abduction to attempted murder. Meanwhile, Dylan remained in custody, expressionless during every court appearance. He spoke little to his lawyers, refusing to answer questions about his motives. In the courtroom, prosecutors presented his journals and recordings, showing how his obsession had consumed every part of his life. He had quit his job weeks before the kidnapping, sold some of his belongings, and withdrawn most of his savings. Every action pointed to a single goal: to isolate Emily completely. The judge called the evidence a blueprint for control, describing his behavior as deliberate, methodical, and cruel. Emily eventually took the stand, her voice steady though her hands trembled. She recounted the moments in the dark room, the constant silence, the way she counted her breaths to stay awake, and how she focused on the faint hum of the air vent to remind herself she was still alive. The courtroom remained silent as she described hearing Dylan's footsteps above her, pacing back and forth, talking to himself. Her testimony painted a clear picture of psychological torture, the kind that leaves invisible scars long after the bruises fade. When the verdict was finally read, Dylan Reeves was found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, calling his actions a premeditated act of captivity rooted in control and delusion. He showed no visible reaction, only a faint smile as he was led away by officers. For Emily, the sentence brought a quiet kind of closure, though not relief. The memories still haunted her dreams, but she refused to let them define her. Over time, she began to speak publicly about her experience, advocating for awareness around coercive relationships and hidden signs of abuse. Her story became a reminder that danger often hides behind ordinary faces, that love can sometimes mask control until it becomes too late. Though the Holiday Inn room was eventually renovated and reopened to guests, its history remained known among the staff, a reminder of the night when obsession turned into horror, and when a team of determined officers arrived just in time to save a woman who refused to be forgotten.